The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.
So here's what's happened. And you tell me who's negotiating and who's inflicting pain. Treatments for children suffering from cancer. The Republicans have agreed to a compromise by funding the part of the government, including the National Institute of Health, which offers children with cancer last chance experimental treatment. Now, these are not things that have already were happening. This is new stuff. They were told, the NIH was told by the president, you can't start any new testing of anything. Okay. All right. So if that's what the president decides to pick, soon as the Republicans found out about it, they said, not a problem. Let's make sure that we fund the NIH. We'll pass a special bill to fund the NIH so we can save children, because that's what they said. They're killing children. Fine. If that's what you really picked out of the 100% of the pie, you only need to shut down 15%. If that's what you pick, we'll fund that. So they said, we'll pass it. The president said he will veto it if it gets to his desk. That's the compromise. The World War II Memorial, that's what we focused on last week. The World War II Memorial is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It doesn't have a staff to it. It was all built with public financing. It is maintained with private financing, built by private financing, maintained with private financing. The White House knew in advance that these flights come in all the time because we're losing so many World War II vets, that there are these groups, again, privately funded, that send these World War II vets to Washington before they die to be able to see it. They knew this. And so what do? They put a chain link fence around the World War II Memorial. They put barricades there. Then, and this is where you have your National Park Service coming out and saying, we were told to inflict as much pain as possible. Then, when the GOP finds out about it, they go down, because here are these old men in wheelchairs, they go down and the congressmen remove the barricades. When one of the park rangers says, hey, you can't do that, and starts yelling at the people in the wheelchairs, what happens? The president raises the stakes and then says, I'm going to put guards around that memorial. So he's spending money. I'm going to put guards around that memorial to keep people out. And the vice president calls the guy who was yelling at the guys in the wheelchairs and saying, you were right. Does that seem reasonable to you? By the way, the GOP has offered to cover any costs to keep the memorial open for the greatest generation. Then there's the furloughed military chaplains. The military chaplains are not allowed to work for free. They have all said, we will celebrate Mass, we will do our services, we will do baptisms for free. They have been told they will be punished if they do it. So you have a baby to be baptized. The military priest cannot baptize your child, or he'll go to jail. He can't celebrate Mass anywhere for free, or he will go to jail. Does this sound reasonable to you at all? In the Florida Keys, small businesses, hunters, and commercial fishermen can no longer practice their trade. They have tried to close down, and get this, they have tried to close down the ocean. The feds are saying you can't do any fishing on the ocean. Does this seem reasonable to you? The American Forces Network, AFN, These are the people that carry shows like mine. They carry shows like, I don't know, what is a liberal show? They have to have 50% of the shows have to be liberal. But they also not just broadcast the news and talk, they also bring our armed forces all of the sporting events, all the football games and everything else. The golf course at Camp David is deemed essential. But AFN carrying the football games, carrying them, not doing them, carrying them. So in other words, I'm running a show, and let's say I'm running, I don't even know, Little House on the Prairie. Every Monday night is Little House on the Prairie night. It doesn't cost me anything to run it because I've already paid for it. I've already got the rights. I've negotiated for the rights a long time ago. I can't run. I'm not going to run it. Little House is canceled. Everything else on the network is running, but Little House is really. By the way, Camp David, the golf course, and Camp David is open. The D-Day Memorial. The GOP has offered to compromise and fund all of the national parks. The president has said he will veto any compromise on legislation. So the D-Day Memorial in Normandy has now been barricaded. Mount Vernon, George Washington's home, is privately funded. The feds block the visitors from entering the parking area because the National Park Service maintains the lot. 100 privately managed parks that cost the government no money to run. The U.S. Treasury actually makes money from rent paid by private companies that employ 400 to 500 camp workers and managers across a dozen states. No federal money is used to operate any of these parks. In fact, the federal government makes money through the operation of these parks. He had them all closed down. And so the 400 to 500 private employees have been furloughed. And by the way, they don't get any of their money back. They're just destroyed. Because I forgot to tell you, the GOP and the Democrats did get together in some emergency legislation. They don't give a flying crap about the 400 and 500 employees that are privately, but those government workers, they raced to make sure they knew, oh, don't worry, you'll get your money. A self-sustaining colonial farm that hasn't received a dime of government money since 1980 has been closed for the first time in 40 years. The National Park Service has succeeded in closing the farm to the public. In previous budget dramas, the farm has always been exempted because the government pays nothing, provides no staff, nor do they provide any resources to operate the farm. The state-run parks in Wisconsin, Kettle Moraine, Devil's Lake, interstate parks, the state-owned portion of, Horicon Marsh, the governor there said, go to hell. The president has closed the Vietnam Memorial. The GOP passed the compromise legislation that would fund the memorial, keep it open to the public, but the president said he would veto it. The operator of a 51-room inn located on U.S. government-owned land in North Carolina abandoned his defiant stance on Thursday to keep his property open, despite being ordered to shut down as part of the federal government shutdown. October is this inn's prime season. The GOP has offered a compromise to open this particular park, but the president said no to that compromise. So here is a private individual that will lose out on the money that he makes in his prime season. State troopers, by the way, have blocked the customers from entering the parking lot. How much are they spending on the state troopers? Again, Park Service ranger said, quote, "We've been told to make life as difficult for people as we can." The president has forced residents out of their private homes. The government shutdown being felt close to home for some locals. They say they're being forced out of their private homes on Lake Mead because they sit on federal land. Acadia Park, Maine. "We've been training for 2 years at CrossFit for this hike. No kidding." She said the shutdown now is going to keep everybody off of Acadia Park. A historic restaurant opened during the last shutdown, forced to close. An iconic Philadelphia restaurant been forced to close its doors and turned away booked parties because of the government shutdown. That is a private restaurant. They won't get any money back. There's a road that goes through a Colorado park. The Forest Service announced the Pitkin County Commissioners to order that Maroon Creek Road be shut down at the height of the tourist season. Ahead of what is supposed to be one of the busiest weekends of the fall, the road is to be closed at T. Lazy 7 Ranch, pending the resolution of the shutdown. The businesses and residents of the Outer Banks have planned a peaceful protest to the closure of Hatteras Island beaches because they have closed the beaches. And here's my favorite. We joked about this. They actually did it. They are now blocking access to trails, roads, and programs at South Dakota's most popular attraction. The National Park Service has now placed cones along the highway outside of Mount Rushmore this weekend, barring visitors from stopping and looking at the mountain.
They really did. We said they were going to put a curtain over it so you couldn't look at it. And they're essentially trying to do that. So you can't stop and look.
You can't stop
from the roadway.
And look, you cannot stop on the road, and they have officers there to ticket you if you do.
That is absolutely unbelievable.
Paid officers, of course.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, no, it's free. How much does it take to put the cones down? The U.S. Department of Agriculture has turned off its entire website in response to the government shutdown, leaving farmers, reporters, and others with no way to access any of the agency's information online. The USDA's total website goes far beyond response of other federal agencies. Seems to be part of an effort to make people feel the effects of the shutdown. Thursday morning, calls to the USDA's press office seeking an explanation were not answered by the press. The St. Louis Gateway Arch has been closed. The park shutdown bounces the rowers from the Potomac. There is no more rowing on the Potomac. The Thompson Boat Center in D.C. has been closed. And the president has closed the military commissary. Military members and veterans and families who shop at the local tax-free store were shocked to discover that the store's doors have been locked. They have closed the PX. This is where you go and you shop if you're a military family. This is at Andrews Air Force Base. They have shut the commissary and they have shut the PX. So you can't go buy any groceries. You can't go buy any clothes, any medicine. You can't go buy meat, nothing. However, the president's golf course remains open. But he said that's because the golf course is paid for by private funds. Wait a minute. So is the World War II memorial. So is the farm. So is the restaurant. So is the damn road that you just put cones on. This is a strike. This is a strike and a slap across the face. This, I'm warning you, America. This is the sign of a dictator. He is slapping you across the face and saying, you will behave, you will do what I tell you to do, or I will punish you. If your friends don't wake up and see the nonsense and see what they are in store for, when you're spending money to put cones on the highway so people can't stop and even see Mount Rushmore, we get everything we deserve, and we are about to get a lot.
The only people who don't want to disclose the truth are people with something to hide.